Membership of the EU, or otherwise, matters a lot for tax policy because we know that the amount of trade that we do, the amount of investment we get in the UK matters for growth, and when designing your tax system you need to think about how big the economy is going to be, how much revenue you want to raise in order to pay for your public spending and not end up borrowing too much money.
Brexit means Brexit.
If Brexit does indeed mean Brexit, success may look like, at least in terms of the economy, trying to get as much access to the European Union single market as we currently can. At the moment we have complete access to that market. We can sell goods, we can sell services anywhere within the EU. If we leave the EU and we're able to continue to sell goods and, importantly for the UK economy, continue to be able to sell services, and in particular financial services, to the EU, that will mean that the harm done to the UK economy will be much less than if we leave the EU and we're unable to trade in services with other EU countries. So retaining as much access to the EU single market as possible will be one way to limit the harm done to the UK economy. Theresa May's new government will have to think about how much money do they want to borrow? Do they want to eliminate the budget deficit, as Mr Osborne and Mr Cameron previously wanted to do? If they do want to continue that policy, that points to possibly further tax rises, in which case tax policy will need to think about how best to design those tax rises. That's a long-run objective. In the near term, there may be a case for tax cuts, potentially to help the economy if we have a period where demand in the economy is weak and we want to try and stimulate the economy through the current period of uncertainty. So the Treasury will need to think through very carefully, do we want looser fiscal policy in the near term to help a weak economy, and in the longer run, do we want perhaps tax rises to help get the deficit back down, potentially into balance? Cuts to corporation tax are always nice if you can afford them. The challenge is we're actually in a world where the public finances are now expected to be in a much weaker state than we thought a couple of months ago, and a permanent cut to the rate of corporation tax will be a net giveaway. A nice one if you can afford it, but doing so now will mean we'll have to do bigger spending cuts or bigger tax rises elsewhere if we want to pay for that. So there's a challenge there for sure. One important detail that perhaps has been overlooked is VAT policy. At the moment in the EU, we're constrained on what we can do to VAT. So by leaving the EU, we'll get greater freedom to make policies in that area. Now, what would be great is if we use those freedoms to do good reforms. So at the moment we have exemptions for financial services and public services. If we got rid of those exemptions, we could improve the operation of the tax system. But a fear is we might use those greater freedoms to do reforms that are less good. For example, introduce reduced rates of VAT on more goods, and that really isn't the best way of supporting the individuals that happen to purchase those goods. One piece of advice I would give to our negotiators, our decision makers, would be to focus on getting as much access as possible to the EU single market. At the moment we're able to trade both goods and services very freely within the EU. If we're able to retain as much access as possible, in particular to financial services, that will be the way to limit the harm to the UK economy from the decision to leave the European Union. So that's as much access as possible to the EU single market.